second presentation was this evening, but Yuri and I met with Dave Mercy over in Oneonta. Who were you there?
Last Tuesday.
Tuesday. And we talked about a lot of the things that we talked about tonight, and he gave us this local law imposing a moratorium on heavy industry within the town of, and it's blank, so it's a template that they use. And it says, whereas, I'll read it out loud just because I know you guys don't have it, you guys can read along. Whereas the town of blank has received requests from its citizens concerning the need to address and possibly regulate heavy industry in the town, and whereas the board has discussed several recommendations for proposed actions, surveys, and statutory changes to accomplish such regulation within the town, and whereas the town of blank is also considering local laws to preserve roadways in the town, as well as other related statutes that may affect the quality of life for all town residents, and these local laws, if implemented, would have a significant impact on the overall development and regulation of land and road use within the town. And then it's, the formal language, now therefore be it enacted by the town board of the town of blank as follows. The purpose, again, we talked about purpose, and it can't just be, we're not going to do anything for a year. The purpose section, the current local laws of the town of blank as currently written may be inadequate to address certain uses of property within the town. The anticipation of possible heavy industry, including but not limited to hydrofracking activity in the town, has become a matter of public concern. Any discussion the town board makes in this matter within the town could have a dramatic and long-term impact on the public health and safety, quality of life, environment, natural resources, public infrastructure, and revenue base of the town. Again, that seemed to address all of the things that we heard this evening in the last meeting. In addition, heavy industrial activity within the town may have other significant consequences, including a broad effect on the economic value of adjoining lands. Each of these impacts, as well as others, requires evaluation to determine the extent to which such matters can and should be regulated. The town board has been addressed by many citizens requesting that the town board review the town's land resources, current laws, and existing land use regulations, and that the desires of the residents of the town regarding the long-term impact of this activity be considered. In order to provide an opportunity to perform this task, there shall be a moratorium on any activity related to the development, implementation, or commencement of site preparation for any heavy industry or heavy industrial activity, including gas well drilling of any kind within the town of blank for a period of 6 months or extension thereof from the date of the implementation of this statute. This moratorium is enacted by the town board of the town of blank pursuant to its authority to adopt local laws under the New York State Constitution, Article 9 and Municipal Home Rule Law, Section 10, or Title 10. That is. Enactment of a temporary moratorium for a period of 6 months following enactment of this local law. All heavy industrial activity, including any activity related to hydrofracking or gas drilling within the town, is prohibited. There shall be no acceptance of any plan for or review by the town board or the planning board related to any heavy industrial project, nor shall there be any authorized the issuance of any permit, variance, or other authorization of any kind by any board, officer, or employee of the town of blank for such activity. And then it defines heavy industry in the definition section. For the purposes of this local law, heavy industry shall be defined as any use or activity which generates significant volumes of smoke, odors, noise, or other polluting waste, and is not compatible with other uses in the town. Examples of heavy industry which are included in this definition are chemical manufacturing, exploration for natural gas, extraction of natural gas processing facilities as defined elsewhere in this law, and or compressor stations, exploration for crude oil, extraction of crude oil, oil refineries, coal mining, coal processing, and steel manufacturing. It is expressly stated that the foregoing examples are not intended to be exhaustive and shall not be construed to limit the meaning, scope, or application of this definition, or to limit the application of this definition solely to the activities identified in the examples. Okay, and then section 5 is early termination of the extension of this law in the event that any new local law which addresses the substantive issues set forth herein should be enacted and adopted by the town prior to the date that the moratorium imposed by this local law expires. Then in that event, the moratorium imposed by this local law shall expire on the date of such new local law takes effect in accordance with Title 27 of the Municipal Home Rule Law. In a like manner, if more than 4 months have passed since the implementation of this local law, and it shall be determined by finding of the town board that an extension of this moratorium is required, then the board by resolution may extend this moratorium for such period of time as it deems necessary in order to fulfill the findings therefore made by the common council, up to and including 6 additional months from the date of the original intended expiration of this local law. Conflicts with state statutes and authority to supersede, to the extent any provisions of this local law are in conflict with or are construed as inconsistent with the provisions of New York State law, this law shall control. Severability, if any part of this law, this local law, is deemed by a court of competent jurisdiction to be invalid, such decisions shall not affect the validity of the remainder of this local law. And then, of course, the effective date is the local law shall take effect immediately upon filing with the Secretary of the State. Okay? So when Gary and I met with Dave Merzig, this is a pretty easy and clear-cut moratorium that was drafted. It meets the purposes of what we had talked about in addressing to give us the time to do the things that we say we need to do. Some of that's in there in kind of general terms. It needs to be really specified what we intend to do with the time. He recommended strongly that we didn't ask for a year's time because that's kind of the outside limit. And he recommended that we go 6 months if we need some time at that point. We write it into the provisions here that we can just do a referendum so that we don't have to do, the whole passing a whole new law type thing. Anything over a year, he said, is probably not going to stand any kind of test of any courts. I know we've talked about the comprehensive plan, being that we don't have it mentioned local laws, local land use laws and things like that. We don't have any on the books, so we don't have a conflict because there are none. Okay, this would be in essence to construct whatever kind of local laws we want to have for land use. We obviously cannot regulate any kind of gas drilling or exploration. That we are prohibited to do. At this point, who knows where the state's headed, but I doubt they're going to pass that down to this level either. So it really is to protect the things that we can within the provisions of the law. So that's why when we talk about getting sued and all that kind of stuff, I'm not saying step off the curb and see if you get hit by the bus. I'm saying we need to figure out exactly what we have the right to do in the minimal amount of legal interaction, whatever that means. I'm not going to do something that I know that as soon as we do it, we're going to get sued or something like that. That would be kind of foolish anyway, because it was one of the towns, and maybe it was Middlefield, I think you mentioned it earlier, you know, where they were actually doing bake sales and stuff, you know, to raise money and all that pro bono work out there, and it was 16,000, this was in the paper, so, you know, and there were 16,000 shy. That didn't come out of, well, for right now, that would come out of their budget. So we have some reserve here. We budget very little amount of attorney fees, and historically have done that just because we don't use the attorneys a lot, which is a good thing. You know, the other thing is that means that we don't have any real laws on the books that would require legal services. So that can be good too. But we want some laws on the books to protect what we feel we need. Yeah, I have to put that too. So this year we budgeted $1,000 in the legal fee line. Doesn't mean that we can't put more money in there, but that's what we have budgeted currently. At this point, David said that it would be about 1,000, well, 1,000 to 1,500, I think was his range.
Right, and he would be willing to come over to a meeting too. He would also,
There'd be a couple of things, whether you wanted to have him come over and actually talk about this some more, or to come over and just do the moratorium. I'd like, you know, I'm not good at this, we don't do this often. I would have him hired to walk us through the process.
and I think that we felt by selecting Dave is that way we aren't biased towards either side, because when Slotty, if I'm pronouncing his name right, Dave, that I think he was slanted toward that, and I think he was looking for business that night. Not that I didn't enjoy his presentation, because I think that, I thought he was somewhat fair, but I think he was slanted looking for business. So the way I look at it, that's a reason we got somebody that's kind of neutral to do this, as opposed to having somebody else do it, knowing that it was going to be paid for. But I think that in talking to Dave Merzick, I think that we need an attorney anyway on board, and I think that we may need to use him more for this reason. So I certainly support using him, whether he comes to the meetings or we need him at, use him as we need him. So, but he's willing to come over here and discuss it in a public forum. So if we want him to do that, we just bill and have him come to I guess one of our future meetings.
He bills us on an hourly rate, so we'll get an hour, we'll get a bill for a meeting with him.
Right.
So try not to talk too much.
Keep it short and brief.
Yeah.
Did he go over the exact process that we have to go through? Exactly.
We basically walked through it. In fact, he was gonna send me something.
Yeah, well, I think that what he has to do is, once he files this with the Secretary of State, I think it takes, about 2 weeks?
Yes, there's a process that we have to do too. And it has to
We have to have a hearing.
Yeah, we have to do the hearing, we have to submit it to the county planning board.
Right.
And again, because we're not doing any kind of ban or anything, he didn't feel that was gonna be a real issue. They're approving moratoriums and things like that, because they're short-term in nature and they're task specific. So.
Right, and as I understand this, and I asked him this question, that if you have a moratorium in place and the DEC comes in and issues permits, basically there isn't much that this moratorium will hold up to. That's the understanding I got.
Help me a little bit, then why?
Well, I'm just saying, because I guess we need time to prepare, but I think that's what I'm hearing from everybody, that the DEC issues a permit, say you have land and you can start drilling.
Moratorium's null and void?
Right. Pretty much. That's the way I read it.
No.
That's
not.
So
My understanding is the opposite.
well. Then
The
there's.
town can't supersede the state, if you don't mind me interjecting.
No, I know. I guess that's my point. But I think, now, did I not ask him that question?
Yeah, this actually, unless the state comes and says specifically that they're gonna nullify all moratoriums out there on the books, they can't come in and say that
They're not gonna actually pass a law.
Yeah, and because this is in essence a law, okay? And what they can do is they can contest our legal right to have this law, which again, it's a matter of the courts at that point. But this is, a moratorium has been used in any law that the state has passed to give to give anybody the time to prepare for it. You know, because if they came in and said, okay, we're gonna put an airport in the backyard today, you know, we should have time to prepare for that.
Right,
And so, I'm not sure that what he said was that. There is a provision in here that states that to the extent that any provisions of this local law are in conflict with or are construed as inconsistent with the provisions of New York State law, this local law shall control. So that to me means that this does hold that place marker, and until they just come in and go, we're not waiting any longer, all these things are null and void, other lawsuits will,
They would have to pass a
grow out of
like
that.
they did in Pennsylvania.
But they will take our power away from there. And so that's,
and they would have to come to the board, I think, to get approval, the gas companies or whoever, they would come to the board, I think, the planning committee or whoever, as I understand it.
for,
I don't think you're ready to
Yeah.
vote.
Where's we going? I'm not sure.
I think, as I understand it, that they would come before the board, basically not getting a permit, but basically saying that we're going to be doing this. But I don't think that they would just jump in. The gas company, for instance, they would have to come in and check and see what our laws
they have to check.
are.
Of course, yes.
Yeah,
Before they apply for the permit?
no, they can apply.
They can apply for that.
No, we
They
don't.
can't-
Yeah, we can't do anything with the regulation of it at all. It's just that if they applied for the permit, they'd say, we have a local law in the books for 6 months, so you can't really do any activity until that 6 months is up. They can even approve the permits, they can apply, I don't know whether they approve them and issue them if you can't do it in the town, that I don't know.
but this would protect us.
Dory had a comment earlier.
Well, I only had a question, because of the way that is worded for the heavy industry and everything. What effect will that have on like agro-farmer who comes out and spreads whey that stinks to high heaven? I mean,
Odors.
doesn't that also cover,
It's in.
Yeah, that would be out, it would be prohibited from land spreading in Pittsfield.
Unfortunately, they give it to the farmer who spreads it, and that becomes an agricultural thing, which is not considered heavy industry. Possibly.
According to what? Not to that definition.
right, that's why I'm
That's
asking.
all where agricultural falls.
This does say.
That
I'm not
doesn't
aware.
mention it.
The odor.
Then those provisions would have to be written in.
We're gonna look at that.
Then there's gravel mining, which
That's
definitely is
not-
heavy industry.
Loggers, farmers.
But that's not in,
It's, no, those are examples. It's that, it is so vague, the way that's worded. It
Examples
says
which are-
whether it has a significant impact, which is arbitrary.
volumes of smoke,
objective.
odors, noise. or-
But I'll tell you, spreading yogurt waste that blankets hundreds of acres in odor that to me smells like money, I think it's great. But a lot of people hate it. I mean, that would be a good reason to, you say, well, you can't do that here because it's a lot of stink. That's just, you have it right in there, it's odor.
Yeah.
And it's significant, you know it is.
But,
Never mind what comes off.
but is the odor, but is
I
it
don't smell
hazard,
this.
is it?
They don't say anything about hazardous,
No, it
Gary.
doesn't.
That's not even part of the
Yeah,
thing.
so
That's a whole nother-
So the odor thing, unless it were hazardous,
It has nothing to do with
But
this.
isn't that gonna be challenged by the gas companies when they say, hey, wait a minute?
Well, I would think even before the gas companies, Giovanni would be challenging.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up.
And your farmers.
That's why you don't wanna go down this road.
Well, the farmers are protected in a different set of laws, the agricultural laws, right, that kind of supersede things.
Pittsfield's
What
an ag
about the
district,
propane
right?
and home heating oil truck?
Pittsfield's an ag district,
I
right?
don't know that for sure.
Ben, do you know I think they were years ago, yes.
But anyways, there are certain laws that protect certain industries already that we have no.
But you also have people that aren't involved in the farming industry that would use that to fight what the farmers need. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, believe me, I know
I mean, the thing is, you do all the work that you need to do without the moratorium.
Yeah. With creating extra expense.
And I'd be right there, I mean, I'd be right there, like, protect our roads, protect our water.
Roads and taxes, those are
So
your.
then what, but that's what I don't understand, if it's not an issue, then why is it a problem to have a moratorium?
Why
Because
is-
moratorium
it's
in-
symbolic for you, it's very symbolic. It's a line in the sand for you guys.
Yeah, it's a line, I think it's just
It's an expense.
That's the
so
problem.
we can look into how to protect ourselves.
You can look into it without it.
But according to the way that that is written, it's gonna cut a lot of other things
Well,
off
I
that are
think
gonna
we're gonna
give you
have
a
to talk about
problem.
that. You know, I think
Yeah,
that was
including gravel
that was a big
mining.
thing about, you know, the way it was written.
Well, we do, I think we do have 2 gravel mines there.
You think it's
Yeah.
Trees and
Maybe shut them down then.
You better shut them down, or else
I think it's-
dust is really significant.
We have 3 in Pittsfield, Burrell's, Pies, and Weisler,
Right.
all are
You
needing.
know, they didn't.
So they're in our town.
Pretty significant.
No. I got a copy more.
Okay, so well, there's a couple of things. We're gonna talk about the committee here very shortly. Do we want to continue to pursue the moratorium?
How does
We
this?
can get started on the other independently of the moratorium. Okay, we don't have to do them both. We can do them independently anyway.
How does this affect that hazard mitigation plan with the county? Is that part of this, is this part of that?
No,
Are they 2 separate entities?
Yeah, that's pretty much just written for the county.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's very vaguely written. They mentioned
Because I
gastronomy.
heard something, I was talking to somebody from the town department, so they said it's being challenged down there because of I thought he told me the hazard mitigation plan covered part of this or something, and it was like, they agreed to that last month, and they're disagreeing to it this month, and they were debating back and forth whether it was crossing the line with each other.
Well,
I
I just can't remember the exact wording in there, but I think most of that is the regulation piece of which we can't do anyway.
Okay.
You know, it's what they can and can't do with the hazardous waste.
Okay.
And really doesn't have anything, there's very few things, and we talked about the road use agreements or use laws. That's one that's out there. The other thing with the odors and things, I don't know to what extent we can address them. There's certain things that are exempted in the ag laws, you know, that allow the farmer to spread his manure right behind your house, and so I can just go over and steal some corn. But so there are some things that do come into play there, but we don't know all that we can do. You know, we can't. Well, what we know we can't do is we can't regulate the industry. That we do know. We can say, you know, right now they're saying that the only way you can, the regulation is the most severe case, the ban, and that's being tested in the courts. You know, and I guess for me, I would recommend going down that road. That's the little too far for me personally, from a comfort standpoint. So really, the moratorium, in my opinion, and the thought that I had about that is we don't know when they're going to turn on the green lights. And so as soon as they do, then we're going to take whatever they offer us at face value, because at that point, we have no chance to take our time to do it. It's there, and we got to deal with it as it comes. Now, if some of the people here were right, and it's not going to be here for a year and a half anyway, then the moratorium becomes a moot point. Okay? I think the most important part of any of this is starting the committee and finding out as much as we can, as quickly as we can, on the things that we can actually do. Now, then when it comes to hiring experts and things like that, I think that there are people out there that will give you opinions and without much cost. I mean, obviously, we've had a couple in the last couple of meetings. So at that point, you know, I don't need to be a scientist of any nature. You know, we just have to feel comfortable with this seems to be the direction we want to go. And I say we, I'm hoping we're still talking collectively, everybody, because the hardest thing for me is having 5 people here trying to make a decision that's going to affect the town of Pittsfield for the rest of our days. You know, that's not a very comforting position for me. And trying to come up with whatever selection device we use or sampling device we use, to see if we can get people to vote on that. I think it's a great idea, just because then my vote becomes one of all the people of Pittsfield, as opposed to 20% of the vote of this board.
Well, it's a great idea as far as it lets us off the hook, but will that be an accurate vote?
Well, it'll be as accurate as my guess.
It'll be more accurate than what we're doing now.
Or we're not doing anything.
It's gonna have to be, if we make some kind of consensus as a people of this town, via an avenue like I suggested, I still think it's gonna be more accurate than what you've got now, which is nothing.
I gotta say, after listening tonight, I'm kind of opposed to the moratorium. I don't think that we really could give a good reason. And when the lady spoke up and said, why, what are you gonna do? I don't think we gave her much of a reason. Just to say to prepare, but nobody says what we're gonna do to prepare.
Well, that's what he's talking about right now.
Seems like just a way to stop.
Well, the moratorium really is just a way to buy time. Now, the gamble is, how much time do you want to buy? Again, we can do the committee and start that work, and we will do that anyway, regardless of the moratorium. But if we have a moratorium for 6 months, we got 6 months to do the work. If we don't have a moratorium, then it's a guess. How long is it? A month, or is it 2 months, or 2 years? If it's 2 years, moratorium is we've wasted money.
Which has already been 2 years. We've already talked about this for 2 years.
No, but it really doesn't start until the state decides what it wants to do, because we don't know what we can do until they know.
I heard in the discussion earlier, a lot of mention of the phrase that the town board should do due diligence. And what the moratorium does is give you the time to do that due diligence, to study it. What Dave Slotchie said last time was, if permits are issued, then you can't have a moratorium and you got no control. This at least buys you some control and buys you time to do due diligence, to check it out, to see what's involved. If you don't do the moratorium, you risk not having that chance. So not having a moratorium is everything to lose and nothing to gain.
If Dave Slodgy told them that they couldn't get a moratorium in after permits were issued, then he told them wrong. Because the two things they have control over are their road use and their taxes.
In order to have a permit issued on your property, you have to have a gas lease signed, correct?
Correct.
No, it can be integrated.
Yes. Yeah, 40% of the population can be
Okay.
integrated.
Oh, that's right.
So once the state says, the state comes out tomorrow, Cuomo says, I want a gas truck. The gas company's gonna go nuts with the land coalition, and you guys are gonna start negotiating contracts, and that's not gonna happen overnight.
Yeah.
Because you guys have your price, the gas company has their price. So no permits are gonna be issued until that's settled.
Correct.
That could go 2 months, 3 months, we don't know, just like we don't know when Cuomo's gonna sign.
You're assuming they're going through a coalition and not just a group of landowners.
And they can, but there's gonna be a negotiation process that takes place there.
And it'll take them at least 6 months from the time this lease is signed.
So no permits will be issued until we have a signed
The gas
lease.
company is gonna spend at least 3 to 6 months just researching the property.
They have to
Make
do a
sure there are
CEQA.
no liens on it, then the CEQA has to come
The
in.
secret's 6 months, that 6 month process. They have to check to see what birds live
So
on
if
the
Cuomo
property.
tomorrow says
What the
we're drilling
water-
gas, theoretically, at our next meeting, we can still have time to put in a moratorium before any permits are issued.
So what is the
If we need-
moratorium?
You would probably have time to create a road use agreement before this starts.
Once the permits are giving out,
Will your moratorium restrict the present industry in the town, like your 3 gravel pits?
It'll definitely discourage it.
We got that, we can address that with the attorney, that's on my list.
Oh,
Got that.
We can make that, you know,
What
we'll
about
figure it out.
fuel
You
delivery?
can grandfather
Because it
this.
says in the moratorium.
Right, that's another thing that could be recommended, was in that other one that I was talking about.
my,
Yeah,
What-
grandfathering in existing
Right.
business.
Bill, if I may, the only,
my thought first.
again, I am not looking to interfere here. You're causing confusion and frustration among borders of towns, number one, with the moratorium. Because now, the way permits are issued, the permit can also go on a land that has, an owner that has land in both towns. Okay, so that causes an issue for you right there, amongst the other towns that are around you. That's just a concern to take into consideration too on a moratorium.
Well, one of our biggest has banned, so we're a little better shape
Yeah,
there.
well,
Uh,
yes,
Yeah.
at this moment.
Well, and that's what we have to look at. We have to look at the legalities behind the.
Let me finish my
Oh, I'm sorry.
answer to Mike. If what Slotsky said is true, that once the permits are issued, you cannot issue a moratorium, what's going to happen to the moratoriums that are already in effect? They're going to become null and void.
No.
And in your language on the law, where that law will supersede state law, you better check the state constitution.
I'm not
Because
saying
there-
anything,
no.
I'm banking on lawyers, and he's
All right,
been doing
but-
this for 30 years. And so if anybody has expertise in it, between him, I, and probably the people in this room, it would be him.
All right, according to the New York State Constitution, you cannot have a law that is already covered by a state law. So that law, where it will stay on the books, will not be true.
Well, they're talking about home rule, and that the law actually from the state gives us that right. So, you know, and again, I'm not gonna debate law. I mean, that's, it, what we looked at was part of what we talked about here last is there were a couple of things. We wanted to hear from you guys tonight, or you guys, and then we wanted to check about the process of the moratorium. We wanted to talk to an attorney. And so that's what we've done over the past month. And now we're, at this meeting, we're trying to determine whether this is the prudent moment in time to go forward with a moratorium, or do we need to find more information? Do we need to do a sampling of our public? Do we need to get the definitions about the covered industries disclosed so we have the answers? And then we can even ask the question, what happens if they come and say that all of this is null and void? Because I know some bans out there, the way the law is written is that if it's determined that it's illegal to have the local ban, then the ban is in itself dissolved at that point. It's an automatic, which state laws
At
basically.
that point, you might need other laws, local laws to protect you in other ways too, like road use laws and whatnot.
Right, and so the only thing I do know for sure is they've given us the option to do at least the road use laws. They've granted us the permission to do that. And there's some other ancillary things out there, I just don't know specifically what they are. And those are the things we need to look at and see how we do that. Now, if we put road use laws on the books, how does it affect the farmer? How does it affect Chobani? How does it affect, whoever else may come along the way? And it will, because it has, and the county's done it, and if they have lawyers that are on the board, or, consults the board on a daily basis. So if they can make the mistake, we can make the mistake. Simple law of physics at that point. So the question here before us is the moratorium itself. Separate from what we can use the moratorium for, do we want to use this stopgap measure as a way to create time, whether real or perceived at this point? Because if it takes the state longer to get around to deciding what they're going to do than 6 months, then our moratorium's going to be up before the state, and so no, it really didn't matter to anybody except for we're going to spend $1,000 to $1,500. I mean that's the risk. I mean that's the investment for the return. If we think that we can get it done within a year, the things that we wanted to do within the moratorium stopgap, then we probably don't need the moratorium. All right. And the question again keeps going back as far as I'm concerned. What does the public want, and how's the best way to collect that information? I mean, that's sticking in the back of my mind. So, do we ask them if we want to have a moratorium and see what they say, or do we want to make that decision ourselves based on what we've heard over the last 3 years in this case?
I think that's the whole idea of the moratorium, is to make the decision so that we can do the work that we need to do without any risk. That's the whole idea of the moratorium. And I understand where you guys are coming from out there, but if it's gonna take 6 months or a year for New York, for the gas companies to do their leases and sign their leases before the ever drilling comes to this area, then it's a moot point. Why are you against the moratorium?
Why are you for it if it's so new?
Because we want to be able to, you say that if they start issuing permits, that we still are protected. But yet, not just David Slotchy, I've heard it from plenty of lawyers. I've read in many cases that they said that you should actually have a moratorium in place before permits are issued.
Why
So-
make a political statement for a
I'm not
moratorium
making a
when you
political
don't need
statement, I'm
to?
protecting the town.
No, wait a minute, protecting them from what? I would rather see you use that $1,500 legal fees that you have right now to pay a lawyer to make a road use agreement, than to throw it away and then have to redo it again
Correct.
to do the road use agreement down the
I'll
road.
answer your question again. We know exactly, sir, and I respect your position, where you stand. Personally.
Me, personally.
Personally, where you stand on this. It's
Okay.
not that you haven't made up your mind.
Right.
And we do know, in terms of going to the meetings and stuff, that there is this, a moratorium is seen by the people in your camp as one step in achieving a total ban. And I know you'd love a total ban. So that's the why we don't want to see a moratorium.
That's correct.
It's a numbers game. That's all it is. They came right out and said that on their own website.
You're inviting litigation.
We've got 77 bans
I'm not worried about
out of
litigation.
450
You
towns,
should be, these are your people.
and that's what they're
I'm
looking
talking
for.
about as with a moratorium, I'm not worried about it.
Okay, you're gonna, first of all, you're gonna create expense, and $1,500, I deal with a lot of attorneys, I don't, $1,500, that's gonna get you a day's worth of work. So good luck with that one.
If you would like some road use agreement, I will get you a few copies.
No, believe me, I got tons.
Actually, gonna wallpaper the place with them.
Library when I get done with this.
Is there another 1,500 to extend it?
No, that's just to get the local law in place. To basically hold our hands to walk through the local law process. Put all the law in the books. I mean, every year.
So you said, Bill, that we could form a committee to start the process without a moratorium, to decide what we want to do, to go out, poll people, and decide how we're going to poll people on what they want us to do here in Tompkins. That was an option?
Well, okay, but let's not get off the moratorium.
Oh, okay,
too far,
fine,
but no, that's okay, because
I was trying to move on here.
It's a factor. What I thought would be good is to have a committee, and I don't care what we call it, I got a committee on heavy industry here, but we can make it so that the initials spell something cute too. But take a couple of guys, we'll take a couple of guys from the board, and if we only have two, then we don't have to have the public meeting things and all that kind of stuff. And I would also ask that we get some other people from the community, okay? And I'd like a nice balanced board, so I have asked Mike if you would be interested in doing it, and I've asked you individually, which kind of violates the open meetings law, but I'm making full disclosure of that right now, just if you were interested. And if you would like to do that, that does a couple of things. We don't have to wait each month, we don't have to call special meetings, you can pull in whomever, however often you want, and you get some support from the community, who hopefully we aren't doing any of this in a vacuum, that the community members are talking to other community members as well. And then we start pulling down okay, what is a road use agreement, what kinds of things do we want to have in it? First of all, can we even enforce a road use agreement anyway? I mean, that's the big thing for me. I mean, even if we have a really well-crafted one that's beautiful and covers all the points and exempts all the people that we need to exempt, how are you gonna enforce it? You got guys ripping up and down the dirt roads now, not stopping for school buses, so.
We can use a dog,
So
she's
my-
pretty aggressive.
Well, there you go. She could even get a raise too. But you know what I'm saying? It's not just having these laws on the books, it's being able to enforce these laws. And I learned that through the whole dog debate there, that, it's been awful. And I'd love to even help fix that, So anyway, the committee would be nice if you guys are willing to do that, and the rest of the board thinks that that's an okay thing to do. That has nothing to do with the moratorium. That just has to do with the committee that's gonna do a bulk of this work, the heavy lifting, if you will, on heavy industry, to see what things that we have at our disposal to use, the legal things that we have at our disposal, and which ones do we want to address, like odor. That's got all kinds of different variations of complexity to it. And so we need to know that, and I think instead of trying to have, people come and make presentations and spending a lot of time at the board meetings, this way it would open it up, if you could get together on a, Sunday afternoon because you had nothing better to do, that would be, I just think it would be a nice way to do it. And collect the information, come back to the board and give us an update, the abbreviated version hopefully, on what we need to do. We can still pursue these other things, but I do believe it's something that we need to get going sooner than later. And again, the thing with the moratorium for me was giving us enough time. I personally am not thinking that they're gonna get here anytime soon anyway. So I'm not as concerned now as maybe I was at one time, trying to buy some time, because I just don't think they're gonna get here anytime soon. So we probably have the 6 months without the moratorium, but that's just my guess, And so what Paul's saying is we all buy insurance, and that isn't because we know we're gonna have an accident, that's in case we have an accident.
It's because we have to buy insurance.
Well, sometimes, yeah, you don't have to.
State law.
Well, so what, until you're caught?
Maybe
Doesn't
it's
matter.
better.
So the point is, okay, so that's the committee piece, and I go back to that again. But the moratorium really is do we want to, and I understand they're lining up numbers and stuff out there. My thought about the moratorium came about 2 years ago, so it really hadn't factored into the overall plan, and it might look a certain way to certain people. I don't care, people are gonna talk about you anyway. I'm more concerned with what's gonna happen in our community, and it's an awful position to be in, and I just think that we're all struggling to try to get through it. So if we don't think we're ready for the moratorium process, because from the process standpoint, if we wanted the moratorium this month, we were gonna have the attorney come in and start the process next month. But it sounds like there's too many questions that came up this month to be able to say, okay, we can turn the switch on the moratorium. Things like, definitions about covered industries, how do we exempt people, the state law versus the local law. There's answers to these things. We just, we're hearing the opinions, but again, if I'm gonna pay an attorney, then I'm gonna base my opinion on the paid attorney, that really doesn't, to my knowledge, doesn't have he gets paid, so that's what he does. He said that's why he didn't go into politics, because he don't get paid enough. As an attorney, he can get paid and still have his opinion.
Here you go.
So,
I haven't met an attorney yet that didn't get paid.
Right.
He's usually the only one that makes money.
yeah. So I would rather,
Except for the Suttoners attorney in the PA.
so Steve.
Can we have an additional meeting earlier or whatever to discuss these things with the attorney?
We can, there's obviously
Obviously do that, or?
there's a financial cost, because I asked him if he'd be willing to come and talk to us philosophically as well, basically what this is. And he said, yeah, and that pushed it to the 1,500 figure, 1,000 to go through the process, 1,500 if he came for a meeting and discussed, well, depending on how long we talked, his meter starts when he gets in his car, and it continues to run through the discussion, and when he goes to the bathroom, when he leaves, and when he gets back to the house. So we get to cover all of that.
Does he have to go to bed?
I don't know. I'm not gonna offer him water.
You better follow that thing right up.
Quite the cool.
So,
You guys carpool to his house.
yeah, that could be, well, I'm not sure we can carpool, because that would put more than 3 people together on board in a car. So, there's rules. We're gonna follow the rules. Well, okay, let's get back to, we still gotta, talk about the moratorium. We started down that road. So at this juncture, do you think we need more information on the moratorium?
My opinion, I think we need to delay this. I'm not sure how long. I would like to get feedback from the committees and get a good survey of the people out there on what their thoughts are on this, and bring it back to us. And I think we need more information before I guess I would go along tonight with a moratorium. I just think we need to delay this, because there's, after, comments on this.
Couple of quick questions.
Yeah, and I have a concern with some of the things that's on there, so I guess at this point, and that's just my feelings, I don't know how you feel, Mike, I guess everybody needs to speak up.
So the question though, Gary, before we get off, you made a comment on the committee and collecting information.
right?
Okay, what are you talking, like the sample that we kind of talked about, that was banging around here, where we asked the public whether they want us to do a moratorium?
Well,
What do you think?
what is this committee, what is their job then? Let me ask you the question. What is their job gonna be, the committee?
They were going to identify what things what laws that are out there that we can actually exercise for the protection of the town
Okay.
in relation to heavy industry. It wasn't really, that's the question, whether you wanted to do something, it was more what's available. And then once we collected what's available, then, you know, might recommend a direction for like road use agreements.
Right.
Road use laws or road use agreements, or don't have anything and hope that they're gonna take care of it when they come. I mean, that's an option too.
Yeah.
And I have heard the stories that they go into towns and they do fix their roads and buy them all kinds of stuff. And I've also heard the concerns of the one guy that had a lawn that yet they built up the road about 3 feet. Now he has to drive up out of his driveway. I mean, so.
But they raise his mailbox.
Okay, that's nice. You see what I'm saying? So there are some things like that, you know, I mean, it sounds kind of funny, but you know what? If I had to drive out of my driveway like that, I'd be pretty ticked, you know, every day. So are there things that you can build into the road use, things that prevent that from happening?
Well, I
Raise
guess.
the whole house instead of the mailbox, put everything on.
I guess some of the issues that are stated in here, if you were to vote this in, as soon as you got this thing back from the Secretary of State and it was implemented, on 2 or 3 of the things there on the definition of heavy industry could be challenged before the,
Yeah, it would have nothing to do with gas drum.
it would have nothing to do with the gas drum. That is exactly right. And that's, I guess, after looking at this a little closer,
Definitions.
you know, I just mentioned to Mike, when he does it, dust is another thing. You know, you're talking about dust, you're talking about odor, you're talking about some other things here, so I guess
Okay.
you could be challenged on this stuff, other than if you implement some of these things that are documented or written in
You
here.
have dust control, who's responsible for dust control, whether it's on the roads or dust control.
It's not Brian.
Please.
You really want to revisit that one, Gary?
Okay, so the
We don't need to go there.
specificity of the issues there, we need to talk about. Well, you guys can plug that in your committee meeting to start that, right? I mean, the kinds of concerns that we have, I mean, that's
Right.
really what we're looking for laws for. is to
That'd be
address the
meeting,
concerns
that'd
we
be,
have.
that'd be the
So
first meeting.
first, your brainstorming session would be identify the concerns that we need to be concerned about.
Why are we here? Not to spend quality time together.
Well,
Get
and
things done.
if
That'd
we
be our
come up-
meeting number one. What's our goal? Your mission.
If we come up with some other issues after looking at this, tell Paul and Mike, if you're willing to have some more input on it, you know, the concerns.
So we're in tabled moratorium discussion? Do you want us to talk to
Somebody's gonna talk to me.
Dave again about these items? I'm probably sending him an email, that way maybe he won't.
Any time faster than you can
Your
talk.
email from this one.
Display ad,
They-
display ad, and in less than a month, I'm guaranteeing you can get a fairly decent survey of the town. Word of mouth.
Okay.
I mean, because as it is, what you're talking about, so that even if you went with the moratorium, it's gonna take you months, because you gotta have a public
I know.
hearing, you gotta
I
have
know.
an attorney come. You could actually ask 2 questions. Do you want a moratorium? Do you want a ban? You can ask them. Ask the people who pay or authority.
So let's get,
That's expense.
so figure, get it straight here, are we talking about a survey or a vote? Because before I said, I heard vote.
Oh, we can just do survey, yeah, you can't, the public can't vote. I mean, their vote really is, they're just casting their
So
opinion.
we're just
Yeah,
gonna ask
they-
survey.
Yeah, we're the only ones who can vote on this.
Right. Well, then I start
So it's,
hearing about
the
the-
survey basically is come in and say whether you'd like to, whatever we're gonna ask them. Yeah.
So the committee could at least come up with 2 questions you want to ask, or I can interrupt.
The committee does the survey, not the board.
Right, but I
Correct.
think you
Well,
want to
yeah,
use
that's
something as simple as this, because if this can't be duplicated, people, I think, will feel more secure with their fellow residents signing off in this book.
I
That's
don't,
what I'm saying.
I don't have,
Well, see, now, that was one of the things that I had brought up at one point, where the interpretation of the responses of people to you guys when you were running for office may not have been as accurate as
Well,
people
yeah,
thought.
it's face to face.
You can
Yeah.
definitely, you know.
So what Darlene's saying, you know, would not be misinterpreted.
All right, okay, so let's get back into the agenda here for a minute. Okay, so the moratorium we're gonna table, I'm gonna follow up on these discussions and look at this information. And ask what the impacts of those would be, and I'll feed them back actually to the next meeting anyway. In the interim, if you guys are willing, well, how big of a committee do you want? Actually, let me ask you that now, they're co-chairs of this committee, by the way.
Oh, we made the decision already?
So, I mean, you want 4 people, 6 people, you get too much more than probably 6 or 8, you're gonna spend a lot of time out.
I would say probably 6 guys.
And I would just ask that if you could fairly select people that, you know, have
Maybe like a
opinions,
jury pool. You get to choose what people you want.
maybe on either side, or maybe some neutral people too. Maybe pick a couple of neutral and a couple on each side, because we want
People who
cross
who
representation.
wanna be
And
involved.
people that will be involved.
And
You don't want
eventually, you know,
here.
I'd love to see this move towards possibly like what we talked about, a comprehensive plan in
Oh,
the
absolutely,
future.
sure.
You know, and I think that's the direction you have to go to as a town now, and, to protect yourself, you
You
know.
can't care just about one thing, you gotta care about the whole town.
Right.
It's not about.
And everything about it.
Yep.
So,
Is that all right?
yeah. So,
Okay. How do you want to, I'll leave it up to you guys then, how you want to do the selection and then?
Okay.
Why don't you do
Paul and I
that?
get together.
yeah, we'll talk.
All right.
Yep.
Now, did you have a comment with this?
Just one, Bill, I'm sorry, just one little point of information. We had committees formed in Afton, and what seemed to have worked very well to represent the broad view of the town. We had a farmer, we had somebody from the business community, we had somebody from the large village, we had somebody with the, non-landowners, but not the farm landowners, and then we had somebody representing something else. What was the other one there?
I don't remember.
With farmers, business, little, smaller landowners, the village, and one board member,
Okay.
all right? And that's,
Yeah, actually, the comprehensive plan, and there's ways, or there's instructions of doing that. They do that selection process, they show you how, and I know, you didn't even say it, but OCCA had, did a presentation to the county supervisors, and they will assist in